Welcome. Ziggy 1X here with another Nier reincarnation video. And I wanted to talk about maximizing damage today. So there are three teams that I've got lined up here with no further ado. And by the way, my fight with Young Jesus online has not stopped. I will post this video soon. I just haven't had time to edit. I've been incredibly busy. I've been doing a ton of driving lately, so it's just been a bit of a haul. I am finding a minute to do this, and this is going to be a very quick video, but I think it's going to be a very important video. I think this is going to be one of the more important videos that I do, and I'll tell you why here in a moment. Let's take a look at my screen here. We've got 2B here, and I've got team names up here at the top left. Crit and element plus, meaning that there is a elemental bonus to the associated element with the attack type. And then there's bold vigor. Now this is also like caged vigor. Bold vigor just means that the higher hit points you have, the more damage you do, the more damage is applied. And caged vigor just means the less hit points you have, the more damage you do. So there are battles where bold vigor works very well. And then there are battles which I believe that caged vigor is actually a more useful stat, because especially in harder content, like we have in Tower and a few other things, your characters tend to spend more time in the sub 50% zone than they do in the plus 50% zone. So I find caged vigor a little bit more useful, but let's go ahead and just use bold vigor since it works better for this sort of granular experiment here. So let's look at the character real quickly. All of my characters are using non-affinity weapons, meaning that they're not their primary weapon types. And so for this 2B, I have a spear, which means she's not going to be making multiple attacks. There's going to be no chaining. I'm going to have abilities turned off, so it's just going to be the standard attack, shooting once off at a time. And my next one I think has fists. I think actually both my next one have fists. So basically, there is no affinity weapon that essentially is that they're compatible with. So let's take a look at the stats here real quickly. You'll notice also that about 18,300 to 18,500 is the attack range that I'm working with. That's close enough of a gap to where it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. And each of my three teams has 100% crit rate. The only difference is this first team has 250% crit damage, and the other two teams have 200% crit damage. So that's going to be the only difference. There is no elemental addition coming from the companion. This is just a companion to basically bring down the amount of damage that the incoming team does to enemy does to me. And everything I've done with debris, memoirs, and everything is basically tailored towards this. So again, 103 and 250, those are the important stats right there, 18.3. Let's take a look at this next one. You'll notice here I've got my Lucid Boon, and each of these weapons has a Lucid Boon on it, amounting to plus 90% damage. So this is what we're going to be testing. We're going to be testing crit damage versus the Lucid Boon versus the Bold Vigor. You'll see here that I've got crit rate at 100% and crit damage at 201, again close enough to 200%, and this one has an attack of 18.5. So a little bit higher, but it's not enough, especially when taken in comparison with everything else, to really make that much of a difference or offset things. So let's go to the next one. Now for this one, I actually used Celebratory Gale, and I'll show you why. I could not get a Bold Vigor setup with the equipment that I have that amounted to about 18.3 on the attack power, 18,300. So I actually had to use Celebratory Gale, and so what I did to offset this is that Celebratory Gale herself has Bold Vigor in her kit. She has 40% Bold Vigor in her kit. Now, this is a little bit of cheating, but it's the same, essentially. This staff right here, which is Celebratory Saryu's staff, is Lucid Boon and Bold Vigor. Both of these being 30% increase when your damage is up by above 70%, or the closer to 100% you get, the more damage you do. Lucid Boon, of course, being increased light damage by 30%. I'm using that Lucid Boon kind of to offset it a little bit. It is a little bit of cheating, but for the intents and purposes of this experiment, I had to change and tweak a few things. The other thing you'll notice about this Gale is that we're not sitting at 90% bonus damage, we're sitting at 100% bonus damage because she has 40% Bold Vigor in her kit, and then we've got 30 and 30 equaling 100, so it's actually 10% more, but you'll see this actually equals out at the end of the battle because with Bold Vigor, as the character takes damage, they do less damage. And so over the course of this battle, it about equals out with the Lucid. Now I'll give my thoughts on this at the end. With no further ado, let's go into this fight real quickly and show it off. So we're on the first floor of the Dynast dungeon. Let's go back over here to crit. Now, again, crit is something I'll talk while I'm doing this battle. Crit is something that I have focused, I put an inordinate amount of attention into my crit damage in my characters. I try and min-max that crit damage as much as possible. And if I can get my character to 100% crit rate and 250% crit damage, which is something I really try for often, that is something I strive for with my characters. Now you'll see, take note of the damage that she's doing. I'm not as interested in the damage she's doing to the trash mobs. I'm only interested in the damage that she's doing to the boss, because that's the best sort of in isolation. Okay, 316,000 damage. So that is my testing number right there. So let's try this again with the other loadout. Remember, 316,000 damage. And at the end of this little excerpt, I'll go ahead and post screenshots of the damage that I did in fights prior to this while I was prepping for the video. And you can see them side by side to see just what they look like. So let's go ahead and do this again. Let's switch over to the Element Plus team. Now, we are again at 200% crit damage, and we are at 90% Lucid Boon. So 90% additional damage for the elemental bonus. So let's see what happens here.
Commencing mission.
You'll notice right away that there's increased damage. Again, I'm really only interested in what the boss is. So the last one was 316,000. Okay, here it comes. See what happens here. 551,000, so 200,000 more. Okay, that's a lot of damage. That is a big, big damage spike. Again, I'll have my thoughts at the end of this. Let's just go ahead and do this last run and see what it looks like. We've got Celebratory Gale here. Again, I know that Celebratory Gale compared to A2, there is no comparison. She is a powerhouse. She just dishes out the pain and the damage like you wouldn't believe. But I brought their attack down to the same level, their crit rate, crit damage, everything else. The only thing that's different about these characters, the way I built them, is the bonus that they're doing from their specific damage buffs. So you see that the damage is very good with the Bold Vigor. And again, she's got 40%, 30% Bold Vigor, so a total of 70%, and then 30% Lucid Boon. Again, I'm fudging things a little bit. I missed that last number, but in my, it's going to be right about the same as the Lucid Boon. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cut out here for a moment just so that I can load those images. Okay, we're back from the micro editing job I just did, and I've got the images side by side, the screenshots that I took in the fights leading up to this. The 311,000, 559, and 602. I know these values are a little bit different from the fight that we just experienced, or the 3 fights that we just experienced, but for the purposes of this video, they work just fine. 250% crit damage, that's the main operating number. There is no Bold Vigor, there's no Cage Vigor, there's no elemental bonus to that. That is just pure 250% crit damage with 100% crit rate. And then we have the 90% elemental bonus, bringing it up to just about 560,000. Then we have the 100% Bold Vigor. It's a Bold Vigor Lucid Boon mix, but it's 602,000. So this becomes situational. And here's where my thoughts kind of kick into play here. So we have 3 different priorities of damage. I won't even call them different damage types because The way I understand it is that crit damage, when you are doing 250% more crit damage, that extra 50% on top of the 200% that you were doing is adding 50% damage. But that's only 50% damage on top of the 200%. Now, getting that extra 50% damage while keeping your crit rate up at 100% becomes increasingly difficult. And this is where I start seeing diminishing returns that I have learned from these experiments. You have to really build your memoirs carefully to get the attack, the crit rate, and the crit damage balanced out to where it's a net gain. But when you look at the, excuse me, my headphone was off there. When you look at the ease of which it takes to get your elemental damage bonuses, let's go over here real quickly to my weapons. Okay, I have a lot of weapons in here that have elemental bonuses. We have these guys, for example, the Blackhorn weapons that we get from the Dark God fights. And we get these horns, we get these medals, we get these things that we're able to use on our mythic slab board that we're able to build these weapons with. This guy right here has a neat little ability. At max capacity, his fire damage dealt up by 20% and wind damage taken down by 20%. This is on a weapon, so this is just a flat 20% more damage, which is equivalent to a 220% crit damage just in a weapon. And then we go down here to where I have my light weapons, and I've got a lot of light weapons that have Lucid Boon. Now, I'm going to highlight this light weapon specifically because this is a really, really amazing example. Let's take two very contrasting weapons. We've got this guy right here, which has got obscene attack. It's 3,500 attack on a weapon, which is very, very high. But then we go down here, and this is, again, Celebratory Saryu's staff, if I can find it. Where'd you go? Where are you hiding? There we go. And that's compared to 1,892. There's a big difference in attack there. But what this staff has that far more than anything offsets that difference is it has both the 30% Lucid Boon and the 30% Bold Vigor. So it's starting again, Bold Vigor at 70% all the way up to 100%. Your damage is increased according to whatever percentage life you have. If you have a healer in your party that just keeps topping you off, great, you're doing more damage. Or if you have a way of directing enemy damage type to another character, and that character that with the Bold Vigor can just keep firing things off, great. Again, Cage Vigor works in the opposite direction. The lower the hit points you have, the more damage you do. Subjugation, you see EX Mocha Joe doing absolutely bonkers work with that. But this weapon right here, it has Lucid Boon and Bold Vigor. That is 60% more damage from a single weapon under ideal circumstances. So we have access, by the way, this is why the anniversary banners are so good, because almost every single anniversary weapon has some kind of elemental buff on it. This is Celebratory Gale's weapon right here. It has Lucid Boon on it and Bold Vigor on it, okay? So this is damage up by 15%, so it's not quite as good as Celebratory Saryu's, but it is a dang good weapon. And actually that is something I didn't take into account with my experimenting now that I look at it. I put that weapon on as a sub slot. It had the 30% Lucid Boon. I didn't realize it had the 15% Bold Vigor as well. Anyways, you get my point. It's not a perfect experiment, but it does go to show a lot. First of all, I think that we focus as players, or at least I do, just speaking from personal experience, way too much on crit damage. Ideally, if you can get your crit rate at 100 and your crit damage at right around 200, which isn't terribly difficult to do, then you are looking pretty good. That is after that, it's diminishing returns. So from now on, I'm really not going to push to have my characters go above that unless it's easy to push past it. Now, there is going to be another unique circumstance. To my understanding, at least at this point, or at least for my current character roster, my costume roster, I do not have any costumes that have a elemental boon in them. They have something like this guy right here, Void Leap, which increases the stats. It's not nearly as good as it sounds, but it increases the stats by 20%. Or you have party-wide abilities, like this guy right here, that increases the stats of all light affinity weapons of your whole party. So it increases the amount of raw stats that your characters get from equipping those weapons if they're the associated affinity. Great. But then you have characters, again, we were looking at Saryu's staff, now let's look at celebratory Saryu herself. Luminous Rush, so she has that bonus, 40%. That's twice as much as what you're seeing from some of these other characters. So almost half again the stats of light affinity weapons that you equip with her. You're getting that back again because of this. So that's twice as much as what you normally get. And she has the Bold Vigor. Increases damage by up to 50%. This character, by the way, I completely ignored this character. I've had this character forever, and I have never used her. This is a bonkers character, and it's because of that Bold Vigor. You have characters in the game who have Bold Vigor in their kit, and so that is a flat damage multiplier, or characters that have caged Vigor. Yeah, like this guy right here, Mocha Joe. Damage up by 50% when HP is below 15%. Now, this is actually surprisingly easy to manipulate in subjugation. You can have that Dark God bump him down to below 15% pretty easily, and he starts dishing out some damage. But this is a flat 50% on top of anything else he already does. So in conclusion, you have characters that are built for crit rate, crit damage. These characters are actually, again, your A2s and your others. These characters do not carry as much weight as your Saryus and others because they are built with flat percentage increases to damage based on certain circumstances. Going to opposite ends of the spectrum. So, the most damage heavy characters are the ones that are going to have that flat increase in one way, shape, or form, probably down the line, because there will be power creep. We will be getting characters that have some sort of a lucid boon or some kind of an elemental boon in their actual kit. That'll be amazing. That'll be busted, because that means that character will be doing just a flat percentage more. I know that the new Lavania that just came out, the Abyssal Mirror Lavania, has a 50% increased damage if he is suffering from an elemental or a status ailment. His own weapon poisons himself, but there are plenty of places in Tower and other places where you get either poisoned or blinded or burned or all these other things. And guess what? Lavania is doing a flat 50% more damage, by the way. I used up all my resources trying to find that guy. I'm 73 pulls in right now, and I got 1 4-star pull, which, man, it just feels bad. So enough of that. So what should you be prioritizing when you're making damage? In conclusion, you should be trying to find that mix. Depending on the kind of fight you're in. If you're in Tower, don't go for bold anything. Don't go for Bold Vigor anything, because very likely you're not going to be within that 70 to 100% range, which is where Bold Vigor kicks in. Much more likely you're going to be sub 50% for most of the fight. But that also makes the Vigor abilities a little less reliable in some of the harder content that we're doing. Makes them great as, for, say, agility snipers in Arena. But for the more drawn out content, it's not nearly as reliable unless you're doing caged Vigor, where the lower your hit points get, the more damage your character does. So it basically balances out that closing chapter of the fight where you're about to die, they're about to die, but you're doing more damage and things like that. The most reliable increased damage source outside of crit, which again, getting to 100% crit rate and nearly or right around 200% crit damage is perfectly doable. But if you can find a weapon, and I'll show you here, most of the weapons that we have been getting, most of the 3-star weapons, the new ones that we have been getting, have elemental bonus on them. And I'll show you, I'll give you an example. I think my newest 4 or 3-star weapon here, where was it? I believe it was a light weapon. It's this guy. Okay. It has Bold Vigor on an ability. Oh, it has Bold Vigor on a secondary. This is amazing. This is a 3-star staff with a Lucid Boon that goes up to 25% and very likely a Bold Vigor that goes up to at least 20%. So this 3-star weapon that you can pull from the gacha gives you under the right circumstances, over 50% damage. That's insane. That is as much as tweaking and min-maxing my memoirs to get them up to 250%, which takes a lot of work and a lot of farming in the memoir dungeons. This one 3-star staff will do that for me. And that's what I'm going to leave it at. Go ahead, go back through your weapons, look at your characters again, make sure that you're utilizing the right characters for the right job. Every single costume is going to have its specific niche that it fits into. But these weapons, I cannot overstate enough just how important some of these new weapons we've been getting are. And just pay attention to whether or not a weapon has an elemental vigor. Even if it's a 3-star weapon, it makes it more valuable in a lot of ways than the weapons with crit rate, the weapons with higher attack, the weapons with crit damage, and all these other things. So pay attention to that. That is my experiment. You saw the numbers, the math don't lie. So I hope everybody's having a great day. I'm going to leave this video off here. Thank you for all who have been showing me support lately. I will get back to my fight with young Jesus. Mark my words, he's going down. All right, peace out, y'all. Have a good one. Bye.